Hi, and welcome again to the Path to Profit podcast. I'm Brad Dobson with my wife, Minette Riordan, and we're thrilled to introduce Amy Segreti to the podcast today. Hi, Amy.
Hi, how are you?
We're good. We're excited to have you. And we always start our shows with a fun quote. So I found a quote today that I think is something that you're actually really good at. And it says that you get in life what you have the courage to ask for, by Oprah Winfrey. You get in life what you have the courage to ask for.
It's true.
Super true. So
Wow.
Amy and I met in September of this year at the Freelance Association conference in Austin, Texas. And I was just super impressed with you. Loved your presentation and your slides and just your energy. And I'm so excited that you're taking time to be with us here today. And so I would love, rather than reading your bio, which we'll share out through all the show notes, tell us a little bit about, one, your entrepreneurial journey, because you've done a variety of different things. And then two, what are you up to currently?
Yeah, definitely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to see and hear you again too, Minette. Okay, so my entrepreneurial journey. I started out as a journalist. After I graduated college, I went to the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and then I was just on the path to becoming a career print journalist too. I'm part of that. What do they call them? Xennials. It's like a very trendy term now. It's like the 7-year gap where we had an analog childhood and a digital adult life.
Oh, I hadn't heard that one. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's just a trendy term. But yeah, I was fully ready to immerse myself in print journalism for the rest of my life. And I loved it. And so I went to work for a newspaper called The Globe in North Carolina after doing some freelancing for the Baltimore Sun and the Washington Post, up where I was going to college. And so I did that. And then that was kind of where I first noticed this little itch where I'd want to travel. And as a sort of precocious 20, 22, 23-year-old, I would just book trips and then be like, hey, can I go on these trips? And my editors would be like, Amy, yeah, you got to ask us first. And I'd be like, yeah, but I can do the paper like just for 2 weeks in advance. And so, I kind of noticed this little bit of a rebellion where I was like, no, I think something's maybe not right here for me. So, so I did the full-time salary thing, the 401k and all of that. And then in June of 2007, my boyfriend at the time and I decided to move to San Francisco because we'd always wanted to go there. And it was June 15th, 2007, and we were driving across the country and on our way and had the car fully packed and so packed that we couldn't really see out the back rearview mirror. And it was around midnight, and my ex Ian took a map out of the glove compartment, which I don't know if you remember, I think the iPhone came out in the summer of 2007. So this was before iPhones and a lot of smartphones. And so he looked at the map, and then he was going about 90 miles an hour. So the car very quickly drifted to the left, and we hit a little reflector pole on the highway, which we kind of just barreled over, and that was fine. But the impact of that freaked him out, and so he jerked the wheel to the right and overcorrected, and so we started flipping in the air because we were very top heavy in the back. And I woke up to just like seeing the windshield cracking. I just remember like seeing like lines and glass, and then we landed right side up on the right side of the road. Ian, my ex, was fine. He had a little scratch on his arm. I couldn't move my neck. And so luckily no one had been on the road. No one else was involved in the accident. But someone had seen it from behind. I can't imagine what it would be like to watch that as well. But they called 911 and they airlifted me to a hospital in Aurora because this happened in Colorado, which is where I currently live. And so I spent a while healing there, and I was fine. I just had extensive whiplash, but I just had to move kind of like this. And your audio listeners will not see me, but I'm just kind of moving like a robot basically, and any sort of movement would hurt. So we just kind of settled, and both he and I felt that that we weren't really maybe supposed to go to San Francisco, and none of us, we didn't have anything lined up. job wise. So it was totally fine to just say, hey, what feels right? How could we maybe change the plan? And then we visited Boulder while we were here, just kind of laying low, and just absolutely fell in love with it. And yeah, I'm kind of fast forwarding. I still live here, but that was 10 years ago. He does as well, but we broke up in 2008. So anyway, that definitely, I mean, although it's not like work related, it was definitely just a huge like halt to like, okay, what do I really want to be doing right now? I was going to San Francisco with this idea that I would continue in print journalism. And then I was like, okay, everything just kind of got turned upside down, literally 3 times. So then when I moved here, I started exploring just freelance writing for newspapers and magazines, and then realized that I liked that a whole lot better because I had the freedom to pitch what I wanted and relatively write what I wanted and when, and then also still travel. And so that kind of continued to give me that itch to start creating things for myself. And then kind of speeding that up a little bit, I did start my own magazine, a print magazine called Twine, which was around intertwining play and purpose in our lives.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, it was really lovely, and I just really got a lot of experience, a lot of successes and a lot of failures, managing an editorial team, and then also trying to do advertising, which I was terrible at. And so I did that for a year, and then just that experience was just really mind blowing. And I was like, wow, I just really can create, almost anything that I want, as long as I'm like passionate about it, have the intention, and have, the effort as well. And so I basically moved the idea of that magazine, online to what is now called Live All of You, which is my website. Similarly around intertwining play and purpose, but really just living all of yourself in the world through your work and relationships. So yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. I want to, or I hope that we can dig deeper into what it means to intertwine play and purpose in your life. Maybe you could give us a little bit of a primer on that.
Yeah. So I think for me, we kind of hear a lot about like work-life balance, and I think that's a fine phrase, but for me, it really feels like this intertwining or interweaving, because some things for me that might start out as play, like just for example, even just like, walking around town or going out to a restaurant, and then say, beautiful things happen. Like I meet someone and talk with them at the bar, and then, they have either a need or else they have a connection to make for me and my work. And I just have tracked a lot of how clients or how just work in general has come into my life. And it's often because I'm following my desire and following my craving, and even following just my desire for play. So that's kind of a little bit what I mean. And then kind of from the other angle, as far as coming from purpose, I want to feel that love and passion in everything that I do. I mean, obviously there's administrative tasks, and we always don't always feel the excitement for that, though. But in general, just the things that I create really come from my life and my learnings, and what I want to help people with, and obviously also what I'm still learning and still on the journey of. So it's just very intertwined for me. So I hope that kind of answers a little bit.
That's great from an entrepreneurial perspective. It's really cool because you really have fully integrated who you are with what you do. So in other words, when you're playfully going out there, walking down the street, it's what you're putting out into the world is what your business is.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like that attracts people. That's cool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. And so I'm curious on this journey, even though you talk a lot about intertwining purpose and play, and you talk about following your flow, you're also super organized on the back end. So I'd love to maybe dive into, how do you get stuff done and stay in the flow? Because I think it's a sweet spot, right? And I think creatives think that the only way we're going to be happy is if we're in the flow. when that's not really the truth. So I'd love your take on that intersection of getting stuff done and staying in the flow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I definitely started out more in that like kind of flowy place, and then it was actually when I met my ex-boyfriend Tony, who Minette met as well at FreeCon, and we're still wonderful friends, in 2013 at a co-working conference, which I was covering for my magazine. And I was, trying to figure out at that time, like, how I could really stay motivated and stay organized. And, self-motivation is such a hard thing to do when you're working for yourself. And
we have that conversation a lot around here.
Yeah. Yeah. But then when I met Tony and he lived in New York, basically our lives became going back and forth between Boulder and New York for about 2.5 years. And I was like, okay, now I don't even have the sense of home and like a steady, even a steady trip to the co-working space or to the coffee shop, or, I really need some kind of anchor to hold on to. So I started creating these productivity sheets for myself, and so there's a couple of different branches. There's some sheets that are sort of more classic to-do sheets, but then the main idea around it is planning my day around how I want to feel at the end of the day, and this is a work day too. So basically, I started this process by saying, okay. I want to feel, relaxed. I want to feel successful. I want to feel loved. I want to feel connected. What can I include in my day to give me the highest probability of feeling that way? And then I would just kind of brainstorm just in this like free form way of different things. And so as far as work life, it would involve, so creativity could involve writing, could involve interviews or reaching out to people. And then for various, I started to build some other online businesses. So for those would be, making sure that I'm going to have some income next month. And so, like gen marketing and all that kind of thing. And so I started to make a blueprint of this and then put it into basically one single sheet of paper and make that a to-do list of sorts, but it was more this space and palette for creation for every single day, and that would keep me on track in a way that felt still very creative and flowy, but also had like, okay, I want to make sure that I touch each one of these things today. I want to touch into movement. I want to touch into scheduling podcast interviews or, different types of things. And so that way I would kind of keep them all front of mind because they were all in this sheet. And at the same time, I wasn't thinking of it as this like, these have tos, because I'd already asked myself how I wanted to feel. And that's, one of the most important things to me and I think to everyone, and then kind of went backwards from there to include all of these things. So, and then from that sort of more general blanket, then I can go into each category and say, okay, what are my actual to-dos that will make sure that this category gets, a check for the day. So.
It sounds like a complete time management system. I want to know where we can buy it.
It's $21 on her website,
okay.
alleofyou.com. So, and
yeah.
she's some great, you can download some sample sheets for free. So as well. So if you go to alleofyou.com, you can find her beautiful little graphic and get a sneak peek at some of those. But I think, it's not just the system. Like it's almost like you've reverse engineered the whole process, because most of us start with our to-dos, or we may start with a goal and say, okay, what's my first step to get there? But you actually look at how do I want to feel at the end of the day? Right? And if I'm asking myself that single question, how do I want to feel at the end of the day? It changes everything. I'm not going to overfill my schedule. I am going to make time for creativity, for exercise, for meditation, whatever is important. I'm going to make time to make my green smoothie every day, right? So it's totally a refreshing perspective on how much you can pack into a day. Like you have to unpack the day almost, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, I like the way you say reverse engineered, because I definitely wanted to, because I do actually have a very strong. I'm from the East Coast, so I have a very strong type A sort of personality. Where, especially even when I worked on my magazine, I found myself working like 14-hour days, and so I can kind of fall into both of those ways of being. Actually, if I'm not careful, depending on where I am. Like, so say
Yeah.
I'm in New York, then I might fall into the overworking and not leaving any time for for any kind of movement. And then I realized I've been sitting all day. And then in Boulder, which is where I live, it can be more of like an overplay sort of thing. And then it's the end of the day. I'm like, oh, what work did I do today? Like nothing. I went to yoga, but which is funny because that was the name of my talk when I met Manette at freelance conference, was get shit done and still go to yoga, holistic productivity for freelancers. So
It was such a great talk. I love that.
thanks.
So what's changed for you and so let me ask, it's a two-part question. So first of all, how consistent are you in filling out this sheet still since you created it? And what's the impact been of whether you do it daily or even just a couple of times a week? What's changed for you as part of this process?
Yeah, great question. I definitely, like anyone else, I'll just like start something and then, I might like drift off. So I noticed the thing about this sheet that I make is that for me it's seasonal, and I definitely pay a lot of attention to cycles, yearly cycles and like even moon cycles, and then my own feminine cycles, and just kind of the syncing of that. Different topic, but basically, as like every season, each thing on my little blueprint gets a different amount of attention and can mean different things. And I like having say for example, just to make a simple example, the movement box, obviously in the winter it's going to look different than in the summer. And actually in the summer I enjoy being outside more, and so my movement might look like 2 hours instead of like 1 hour in the winter. And then I also tend to feel really work motivated around January and around September, times of year where we're typically very productive, and you can kind of follow that energy train. I like to jump on that. And so I will tend to do more work and do more promotion, or and generate even more income during those times. So then that way in the summer I can play a little bit more. And I've been doing this kind of long enough that I like, okay, I get my cycles now, and like how I'm going to behave during almost each part of the year. And so what I had to do with holistic day design is I had to change the blueprint almost every season, because otherwise I would stop using it, because it would become sort of irrelevant for me. And for me, if it's not like fixed like exactly what I'm doing every day, then I'll like ignore it and just kind of do my own thing, which then obviously falls into the work too much, play too much
That,
category.
I
So
love
that
that
shows
so
a,
seasonal.
definitely like readjust.
Yeah, I
it
love
shows,
that.
yeah, it shows me just this sort of deep level of personal understanding that I aspire to. I wish I had that. As we're recording this, it's the week after daylight savings time change. And, my tendency is to just blast ahead like I've done for the last 49 years, and not think about those things. And then I wonder why I'm tired.
No.
And so to be proactive about it, um, like you said, know your seasonal cycles, your monthly cycles, whatever it is.
No
Me,
sales calls on PMS days.
I don't have to worry about that.
Right? Yeah.
Men have
Yeah, well,
all
you have
people have their
hormonal
own
days. Yeah.
cycles as well,
Yeah. Yeah.
energy
Yeah.
levels, and for me, I do a lot of triathlon training, so there's a periodicity to
Mhm.
that, and there's some weeks or periods that are much heavier than others in terms of training.
Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
me personally, I don't think about those things, but I need to, and it's super important as an entrepreneur.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm sure there's other examples of, we have this with our clients, we have it with ourselves, where we kind of put our heads up and wonder, well, why is it I'm so tired? And we forget about that we've been on a burn here for the last 6 months or whatever it is.
Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Another thing that I've noticed is great about this system when I use it is if I make something a block that, you know, this is an important thing I want to do, say, for example, writing, and then I notice for a couple of days that that block is mostly empty, I can look at that and say, you know, is this something I really want to be doing? Or is this something that I'm avoiding and I really want to be doing? You know, and then what, so like kind of uncover what's there and how is that resistance? Is that serving me or, or not?
Yeah, one of the questions we ask a lot of times is this moving me closer towards my goals or further away from my goals? And so often I find we can put things on our to-do list or our dream list that are things we think we should do, ought to be doing, right? I was listening to somebody else's podcast about vlogging today, and the host asked, you know, should you be a user of the platform you're promoting on? And I thought it was such a great question, because so many times we might put writing in that little bucket of creative time, or thinking that, hey, this is going to help my business if I'm creating more content. But if you don't read blogs, right, or you don't watch videos, then you're going to completely lack any motivation to create it. So I love the way that at both the sort of emotional, spiritual, and practical level, you're connecting to what really matters. You're not putting things into these boxes that you're thinking about doing. They're things you want to do, and there's a reason that you want to do them. They're going to serve you either in your business or your life.
Yeah, definitely. And as you mentioned, kind of like reading other blogs, that too is even something that's a part of my little blueprint. Is I call it conscious consuming. So anything that's you know, inspiring, blog posts, podcasts, you know, can kind of go in there. And then, you know, I'm pretty aware of what is not conscious consuming, like, you know, Facebook scrolling and I'll be like, okay, I'm doing that now.
Yeah, I love that. Conscious consuming. That's a great perspective.
I do a lot of unconscious consuming.
Don't we all?
It's incredibly ineffective. It actually costs more than just the time you spend doing it.
Because then you take the time to beat yourself up about it too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's interruption time and all of that stuff.
Yeah, and the distraction time. So we've been
not getting those hours back.
And talking a lot about making time for our deepest work, right? We're big fans of Cal Newport, who wrote a couple of great books, but one of them called Deep Work. And it's about really having that time to dive deeply into projects. So I love the way that you're talking about structuring your time so that it's creating space for that deep work on the projects that matter. And yet you're also putting constraints around it. You're not saying, today I'm going to write. You're saying, today I'm going to write for an hour.
Yeah, that's a big thing for me. Is I feel like there is a lot of freedom in discipline, and that's something that I've had to convince myself of as well. Just kind of, you know, I think a lot of us, once we get out of the, you know, maybe the 9 to 5, we kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, you know, I'm just gonna do whatever I want, whenever I want, and then we're like, oh gosh, what's happening? Or we'll go to the other side, obviously, of you know, overworking. And so yeah, I just think it's so important to to love the discipline, and I even call them the containers that you create, because in that container, or in that, you know, period of time or space, there is so much more freedom, because you know exactly what the boundaries are, so that you can be your fullest expression of yourself in whatever that area is. So
yeah, I love that there's freedom and discipline in creating containers, right? It's, you know, on a practical level, you could call it time blocking. I mean, there's so many different ways to describe it. And we were in a class last Friday, and the leader of the class was talking about creativity and how we're actually at our most creative when we have constraints. Right? So if you give someone
I totally believe
10 Lego instead of 500 Lego, they're actually going to be more creative in the moment. But I think it's also super true in terms of how productive we can be when we manufacture our own constraints. It's when it's open-ended that it feels overwhelming.
So true, so true. Yeah, it's so freeing. Just even when you said time blocking, and my mind went a little, oh, what would I, you know, time block like a certain, you know, piece of writing, and it's so freeing to say, like, okay, I have this half an hour, and all I have to work on is this one thing, and that's actually really cool and like and special, and yeah.
I love that. So many great tips and insights. So my last one before we close was inspired by something that I read on your blog. And it was a reference to Lucky Bitch and her awesome money course. But what was more impactful was your own personal revelation around tracking income. And it's something we tell our clients all the time, we tell ourselves. But can you talk a little bit about money mindset and about the shift that you made when you started tracking your income every day?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I discovered Lucky Bitch, I think, yeah, end of last year, and just absolutely she's so amazing. But I found that I was, while at the same time I could get, all of my stuff done and do my marketing and my blog posts, I wasn't focusing as much on the actual income as I wanted to. And I was like, actually, I'm 34. I have several goals. I want to buy a house next year. Like, I actually want to make this a focus, make this a little block on my blueprint. As much as for me, and I think Denise Lucky Bitch has shared this at one point, but like the making of numbers is not something that inspires me, but the kind of purpose that I have behind that, and then the amazing things I can create or give when I have those numbers is what's inspiring. So staying connected to that is really important. And the tracking of income specifically was super helpful for me because I have a lot of different income streams for starts, and a lot of entrepreneurs and freelancers do. And sometimes I was like, where is this coming from? Like, how is this client or this gig, like what's most beneficial, and what's really serving me, and actually even looking at tracking income, like, does it feel good to be doing this work at this amount for this person too? But in general, the idea is that obviously this is different from tracking expenses and doing accounting, but the idea of tracking income just to purely see what you are creating and manifesting. So anything that's coming in, whether that's like a little surprise check from, like, I got a $10 check from AT&T the other day. There's some settlement. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to track that. Like, that's just money coming in. And the purpose of that is to just like see what you're generating and what you're creating, and to focus on that, because obviously what you focus on grows, right? So
True.
so yeah, so it's been a really beautiful practice, and totally different again from accounting, but more from a manifestation and gratitude perspective to track your income. So
That's a great thing to do, is to tie it to the gratitude as well. That's a fantastic thing to remember. Great stuff.
This is all just so juicy. I love it. And tell us about, you have a brand new program that you're working on right now. Tell us a little bit about that and where people can go to find more information before we close out the show here.
Yeah. So it's related to my holistic day design sheets, and it's called the Holistic Entrepreneur Life Mastermind Program, or HELM for short. And basically, it's a 5-week program where we definitely work with a lot of the different holistic productivity techniques that I've come up with, as well as a lot of other really important elements in our lives that I think a lot of us are really good at focusing on, maybe like 1 to 3 of them. But some of those are kind of nourishment and self-nourishment and boundaries. So kind of self-care, purpose and strategy being more of the kind of execution, work-focused area. And then the third one is ritual and resourcing, which is something very dear to my heart around, taking time for visioning, and also replenishing ourselves, but in a way that's more ceremonial, and a way that we don't often honor in our society. And then community and counselship is another area, and then the final area is pleasure and curiosity, which kind of just goes full circle for me as far as purpose goes. So that'll be really, really fun. I had such a fun time creating that, and that starts, I think, January 2nd. And that's you can find that at my website called liveallofyou.com/helm, and it's going to be a small virtual group, and we'll meet and have homework and home play and all that. So
awesome. I like that. Home play, not homework.
Yeah, I like it. And it sounds very comprehensive. That's cool.
It does. And it sounds like a perfect way to really get some of these systems, as well as some of the mindset pieces in place, to really totally kick ass all the way through 2018.
Yeah, and the accountability too, like with other people, focusing on it too, it's always really powerful.
Yeah, the community piece makes a huge difference. And because I think the hardest part about being solopreneurs is the isolation and the being home alone,
Yeah.
right? And it's so important to find those communities. And I love tools like Zoom that make it so easy to create online community. It's still not the same as being in the room with people, but it definitely creates that place of play. Any last words of wisdom or insights that you'd like to share today with our audience?
Yeah, I would say that one of the biggest keys for me when it comes to living all of myself and staying in touch with my purpose and my play is body awareness, and just getting in touch with this has been just so valuable for me over the past couple of years, just getting in touch with what makes me feel like expansive, and then what makes me feel contracted or smaller, and using that body wisdom to say yes or to say no to things. And that can just be a really small, like minute to minute, moment to moment decision making tool that is just like so powerful. So
Cool
I
stuff.
love that. It's a great tip. And I think that aligns with what you were saying earlier about tracking the systems and the cycles, not the systems, the seasons and the cycles, and how that changes. And the more attuned you are to your body, the easier it is to follow your natural rhythms of productivity and energy and play. So I love the way you really are a beautiful model of that holistic entrepreneur of really bringing in the mindset pieces and the body pieces along with the very practical, tactical, let's get shit done pieces. I love it.
Thank you. I feel like you are too, based on based on some of the interactions I've had with you.
I can be better on the
Amazing.
body awareness part. So for sure. And I feel like it's always, it's we're always a work in progress, right? So no matter where
Definitely.
we are, there's always more to do. And I love being on the path.
Definitely a journey.
Yes. Amy, thank you so much for your time today. It was great to have you on the show.
It was fun, Amy. Thanks.
Thank you so much. You guys are wonderful. Keep doing what you're
Thanks.
doing.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Stay warm. We know it's getting cold up there in Boulder. Enjoy the beautiful snow. I know it makes the landscape amazing. And I am Dr. Minette Riordan. This is my husband, Brad Dobson. We are the Path to Profit podcast. If you loved what Amy had to share, go to liveallofyou.com and check her out. And please go give us some comment love on iTunes. We'd love to hear from you when these shows resonate with you. And I challenge you to go to iTunes and share one tip that Amy shared that you are committed to actually implementing in your own life or business. And we'll see you guys all on the next podcast. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.